Tonight, British justice on trial.
An utterly ridiculous state of affairs. You just want to go in there, shake up the government, shake up the judges and say, stop it.
Does the punishment fit the crime?
They get convicted, they get time off for being on remand, they get something off for pleading guilty. What reward did my baby have? A lifetime of hell.
Or have we gone soft when it comes to sentencing?
The law looks upon it that he's done nothing wrong. He's taken somebody's life, but he's done nothing wrong. Go and cut somebody's grass for a while. That's your punishment.
Good evening. It was revealed last month that the number of life-sentence prisoners being released from jail has almost trebled in just 5 years. This figure came only weeks after the Director of Public Prosecutions warned that if people, including victims, feel they can't secure justice through the courts, we're entering what is called dangerous territory. But then this morning, the Home Office confirmed that it's planning emergency measures to ease pressure on overcrowded jails, which means that convicted criminals could now serve time in police cells or in open prisons. So has the government delivered on its promise to get tough on crime? Or have the courts simply gone soft on sentencing? Fiona Foster has been investigating.
Once more, a violent prisoner has been freed to kill. Once more, his case has caused outrage.
Violent criminals released from jail early only to offend again. Victims overlooked.
The former boxing champion Naseem Hamed has left prison after serving just 4 months of a 15-month term for dangerous driving.
Soft sentences causing public outrage.
It's been hard, but thank God, you know, nobody's died.
The horrifying murder trial of Mary Ann Lenehan delivered...
And poor supervision of criminals serving sentences in the community.
4 of the gang who tortured and murdered her were under the supervision of the probation service.
All worrying evidence of a justice system in crisis, or just isolated cases magnified by huge media attention.
And tonight it appears the politicians, like the public, have had enough.
Once the envy of the world, British justice now stands accused of failing the very people it's supposed to protect. Case after notorious case of soft sentences and early releases have led to a loss of faith in the system. Tonight, we'll be looking at some of those cases. May the 1st last year, and a fun night out for a group of teenagers ended in tragedy. A best friend captured on camera phone for the last time.
We was really, really close. She was my soulmate, and we just do everything together. Shopping, going out, going for lunch and stuff like that. We went at college together as well.
Stephanie, then 16, had been to a Kiss FM roadshow with 17-year-old classmate Natalie Glasgow. The girls stayed at the roadshow till 11, then started the long walk home.
I remember walking down the road, there was like loads of people up there. There was over like 4,000 people, I think it was. And we were just like really happy and bubbly because that's how we was. And obviously 2 girls, we didn't want to walk home by ourselves. So we waited until some of our friends were going.
As they walked along the road, the friends fooled around with the flashlights on their mobile phones. This was filmed on Stephanie's phone moments before both girls were hit by a van.
Look at my light!
And then that's all I can remember really, is when we got hit.
Both girls lay unconscious on the ground. Stephanie spent a month in hospital with severe head injuries. Natalie died in hospital that same night. Witnesses said the van driver got out briefly, then drove off with a smashed windscreen and no headlights. He later claimed he thought he'd hit a fallen tree.
We had a knock on the door about 1:30. 2 police officers standing there. They just said that there'd been an accident. Sorry, can't remember an awful lot, but the doctors were coming down all the time. And then at 6:20, told us the news that she'd gone.
You're reading the paper you see on the TV. How many people say what I'm about to say? We have the life sentence. We haven't got our daughter.
This is the damage done to the van. Questioned the following morning, the driver denied seeing the girls. 8 hours after the accident, 27-year-old Mark Hambleton tested positive for alcohol, cannabis, cocaine and ecstasy. He said he'd taken the cocktail of drink and drugs after getting home. Hambleton was arrested on suspicion of causing Natalie Glasgow's death by dangerous driving, a charge punishable by up to 14 years imprisonment. But by the time his case came to court in July, it had been reduced to dangerous driving. And that charge related not to his hitting the two girls, but to his driving away with a broken windscreen and no headlights. For the dangerous driving after the accident, for failing to stop and report it, and for possession of drugs, Hambleton was banned from driving for a year and ordered to carry out 100 hours community service. He wasn't punished for Natalie's death because there was no evidence he'd been driving dangerously before he hit the girls. Natalie's family were in court to see him sentenced. Told by prosecutors and police that Hambleton would probably get a 15-month jail term, the actual sentence was a body blow.
I'm not proud of it at all. I shouted obscenities at that judge. There was 6, 7 uniformed officers shouting that if we didn't calm down, that we'd be arrested. We would be arrested if we didn't calm down.
It sounds like for you that day, it felt like the justice system had just turned on its head.
We were the criminals. We weren't the victim's family. We felt like the criminal.
I hate him because I had memory loss for quite a long while, and like when I was in hospital, they let me go out to attend to Natalie's funeral, and I can't remember being there. And for him to take that away from me, like, we was best friends, and like all my other friends got to be there and say their goodbyes. Like, I was there, but I never actually got to say goodbye to her, so.
Natalie's parents now plan to launch a campaign calling for tougher sentences in all dangerous driving cases.
It's been an inconvenience for him, that is all. An inconvenience. Carry on with your life. He's taken somebody's life. Go and cut somebody's grass for a while. If this is the criminal justice system, as far as I'm concerned, there isn't one. There isn't one.
Hambleton's sentence raised concerns even in legal circles. Some judges believe all dangerous drivers should be jailed.
I mean, that's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. I think the sentence was far too lenient. He should have been sent to prison. There's no question about it. Whatever those circumstances were, dangerous driving is dangerous driving, and it's got to be stopped.
A former top detective believes government interference is hampering judges' freedom to make the punishment fit the crime.
There is a great deal of frustration that the sentencing guidelines, which are set by the Home Office, have one cause at the end of the day, and that's to keep people out of prison, which is totally wrong.
But the figures don't support the view that sentences are becoming softer. Far from keeping criminals out of jail, it seems judges and magistrates are actually being tougher than ever.
We currently have our highest ever prison population. We have more life sentence prisoners in this country than the whole of Western Europe combined. Prison population has increased by over 71% in the last 10 years, precisely because judges and magistrates are putting more people in custody.
So are our views on justice and sentencing completely out of line with reality? In our own test, we're going to find out how much people know, and also discover whether what they think should happen to criminals changes when they're put in the position of the Home Secretary.
OK, all right, ladies and gentlemen, you've got 30 minutes, and your time starts now.
While we explore what our guinea pigs think about the criminal justice system, some victims of crime have had their own views formed by bitter experience.
I got no faith in no authorities whatsoever. None of them. In a crisis like this, circumstances like this, you're on your own. It's the loneliest thing ever.
This woman is remaining anonymous to protect her daughter's identity because of the actions of this man, Craig Sweeney, the son of a good friend and neighbour.
I knew his mum. He used to sit in the garden with us. Typical 17-year-old lad. We wouldn't, he didn't give me any indication of being any different.
But Sweeney was and is dangerously different. He's a paedophile. At 20, he was convicted of a sex attack on a 6-year-old girl. Jailed for 3 years, he was freed after serving half his sentence, in line with current government guidelines. In January, 6 months after being freed, Sweeney visited his old neighbour. He lied about his jail sentence, saying it was for fighting.
The little ones were playing hide and seek. All of a sudden they went quiet, and I instantly knew something was wrong.
Sweeney had snatched her 3-year-old daughter and driven off.
And then all hell broke loose. Everybody was frantic, screaming. My mum said she could actually hear me screaming from the next street.
Sweeney took the toddler to a hostel he shared with other paedophiles and raped her a number of times. Hours later, he bundled the child into his car again and drove almost 90 miles into the night. He was caught only by chance when a local patrol car attempted to pull him over for having no lights. Trying to escape at speeds of up to 100 miles an hour, Sweeney eventually crashed the car.
Craig Sweeney kidnapped and sexually abused a 3-year-old girl.
Sweeney's attacks left the toddler with severe injuries. Police believe that had he not been arrested when he was, she would have been murdered within hours. In July this year, Craig Sweeney admitted charges of kidnapping the 3-year-old, multiple sexual assaults and dangerous driving.
She's not that little girl who was taken that night. She's totally different. She can wake up and be quiet, or she can wake up and be grisly. You can never say she wakes up happy.
Sweeney was jailed for life, but using government guidelines, the judge worked out the time Sweeney must serve before he can even be considered for parole. It worked out to just 5 years, so while unlikely, Sweeney could be freed before he's 30.
Tonight, the judge is in the dock for going soft on paedophiles.
It caused outrage.
I know for a fact that Sweeney left that court with a smirk all over his face. And every other paedophile who listened to that sentence would have thought, not bad for a day's work. They've done me no justice, nor my daughter.
Many agreed with her.
The Home Secretary John Reid has intervened, describing the decision as unduly lenient.
Even government ministers joined the public outcry.
I have today announced measures in order to make sure that those sentences are not unduly lenient in future.
But the judiciary blamed Reid's own department, saying Home Office guidelines had tied the hands of the trial judge.
If that judge can only sentence that person to a 5-year tariff, well, you've got to say the guidelines that make him do that are totally wrong.
The guidelines defence cuts no ice with former Judge Matthewman.
He should have said, well, these are only guidelines. I did the case. I am going to pass the sentence that I think is right. That is the time when he shall be eligible for parole. 10 years would have been the sort of sentence that I would have given.
An utterly ridiculous state of affairs. And every time I read about it, and we will read about it again, there will be more cases, I just rage. And other people do as well. You just want to go in there, shake up the government, shake up the judges and say, stop it.
OK, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Pens down, please. Professor Wilson marked the tests and delivered the results of our mini-survey.
I think I'll choose you for an answer, if I may. What percentage of the prison population were in custody for having committed a non-violent crime? 7%, 15%, 28%, 52%, or 78%?
Yeah, I thought that one, 15.
15%, okay. Well, in fact, 78%, nearly 3 out of every 4 prisoners in jail in England and Wales was not in there for having committed any kind of violent crime, but for a non-violent crime.
Our test highlighted an interesting contradiction in our thoughts on justice and sentencing.
75% of this audience thought judges and magistrates were too soft. But when you got a question imagining yourself as the Home Secretary and you had an opportunity to choose an option about what you would like to do because the prisons are going to be overcrowded, well, guess what? Guess what the most common answer was? Nearly 60% of this audience were going to invest in community punishments and alternatives to prisons.
With our prisons full, it seems the community sentences our audience voted for are bound to increase. But 40 years of dealing with criminals leave Judge Matthewman unconvinced.
Criminals laugh at them. It's the one thing that they want to get is a community sentence. They don't want to go to prison. Imprisonment, whatever they say, imprisonment is the thing that they fear. Always have done.
With jails at bursting point and community sentences of dubious benefit, there is a programme aimed at reforming prisoners inside. Under restorative justice, victims get to meet the criminal in their case and tell them how they've been affected by the crime.
When I first saw the suggestion of restorative justice, I smiled at it and thought it was a gimmick. But when you actually look at it and study it, I think there are some cases where there is a real purpose behind it. And if that works, it has got to be very good.
When banker Will Riley caught a burglar in his home in broad daylight, it wasn't the criminal justice system that was uppermost in his mind, it was survival.
We fought, and then he rushed into the kitchen, he shouted knife, and fortunately he got the wrong drawer, and he then smashed me over the head with the kitchen hob. I bundled him down the stairs, and in bundling down the stairs, he picked up a flower pot and smashed me over the back of the head with it.
Will needed hospital treatment. His violent burglar was this man, Peter Wolfe. At 49, he spent 18 years of his adult life in jail. To him, breaking into Will's house was just another day at the office.
You know, it wasn't targeted, it weren't planned or anything, it was just that I had no money. Basically, I was selfish, greedy, and I was a crook.
Peter was jailed for 3 years for the burglary. Under the restorative justice scheme, he had a face-to-face with Will. It was explosive, so we got them together again.
He looked at me and he said, when we first met, and that just triggered everything. I was just furious, and I just, you know, it was like a fire hydrant of words that came up from me, because I was incensed that this man should delude himself that we had just met, you know, and that we sort of were like ships passing the night.
For Will, restorative justice worked. Confronting Peter freed him from the fear the burglary had left him feeling.
From the day I walked out of Penfield Prison, I no longer was in fear that there would be a person behind the other side of my door. It had completely gone.
For Peter too it worked. He served 18 months for the burglary. He's been out now for 2 years without reoffending.
It's been the turning point, without a shadow of a doubt. It is the single most important experience of my life. Crime is so far from my mind these days, it's like a foreign word to me. It just don't come in my vocabulary no more.
Most prisoners reoffend within the first 18 months of their release. With some, it's almost immediate. A chance encounter with just such a man in the city of Winchester cost 40-year-old Naomi Bryant her life. Anthony Rice had a history of violence against women and children dating back to when he was just 12. Convicted of more than 20 offences, he regularly reoffended within days of being released. He was out on parole when he targeted Naomi.
He stalked all his victims, so I guess he probably followed her home and was waiting for her. He said that they went hand in hand going along the road and then she let go. Well, that wasn't Naomi. She wouldn't have taken a stranger home for a start. I think he probably followed her home.
Naomi was stabbed 15 times and strangled. Her body was found by her 14-year-old daughter. Werner had to call Naomi's sisters to tell them she was dead.
So I rang Zoe first. She just broke down. Then I rang Ruth, and she was just saying, oh my God, oh my God. And I thought, well, at least you know now, you know, it won't be, well, obviously it was a shock to them, but at least they, you know, didn't have to watch radio or television if they didn't want to.
Naomi Bryant's death last August need never have happened. Rice should have been behind bars. A serial rapist, in 1989 he was jailed for life for yet another attack, but was granted parole just weeks before meeting Naomi last summer. Rice's legal team had pushed hard for his release, citing among their reasons the Human Rights Act. Keeping him behind bars, they argued, was breaching his human rights. The parole board released him.
He gave up lots of his rights when he committed all these crimes. Naomi lost all of her rights of his own choice. He gave up his rights. You can't have it both ways.
A condition of Rice's parole was that he should not approach women on their own. But the hostel he was released to was unsuitable for a man with his record. It simply couldn't provide the high level of supervision and security needed.
A, he shouldn't have been released. And B, when he was released, he should have been controlled far more than in fact he was. And that was a very, very bad case indeed. Very bad.
Naomi's mother wants to stop criminals being able to use the Act to win their freedom. So she's suing the government under the same Act, arguing that Naomi's human rights were breached when Rice was freed from jail.
I don't want somebody else's daughter to get murdered. If enough voices speak out, then maybe something will happen. I'm only one little voice, but all the little voices might go for one big voice to make something change.
Judges locking up offenders say their hands are now tied by the government when it comes to sentencing. Overcrowded jails are releasing prisoners earlier than ever so they can lock up new inmates, while the current supervision system for ex-offenders is overwhelmed. There are those who believe that the British justice system is in a state of crisis and that something needs to be done to prevent further lives being ruined.
The general public feel that they're being let down by the criminal justice system, and in my view they are.
They get convicted, they get time off for being on remand, they get something off for pleading guilty. What reward did my baby have? What does she get out of all this? A lifetime of hell.
Fiona Foster with that report. Coming up on Friday, Fast and Furious. Meet the boy racers, wreaking havoc in towns and cities everywhere.
What sort of speed have you got it up to?
I've had 160.
160?
Yeah. I find it hard to obey speed limits because I've got a heavy foot.
And you can see that report on Friday night at 8 o'clock. Until then, from all of us here, goodbye and thank you for joining us.
Next tonight, will Fred make his mind up before it's too late? We're back to Corrie here on ITV1. Then it's crunch time for Maggie and Phil's marriage. Confronted by the past, can they sort out their future on Life Begins? With the complete guide to parenting later at 10.